Hey, yeah, so today's a different type of video. Everyone who knows me knows I'm really into the paranormal. Everyone who knows me knows I'm into paranormal story times. That's originally what I wanted to do with my YouTube, was to do paranormal investigations. I wanted to do true crime videos. I wanted to, tell my own personal experiences with the paranormal. But I also like makeup. So that's what I want my YouTube to be, is basically both like makeup and paranormal. So for today's video, it's gonna be different. I am gonna tell you one of my very many paranormal experiences. I've had quite a few, but this one in particular kind of like struck me different because it wasn't necessarily scary at the time. It was scary because I was 12 years old. It's 2019 right now, but when this happened, it was 2009. So 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago in July. So for those of you who don't know, I have family in Chicago. My mom used to live in Chicago when she first immigrated to this country. She lived in Chicago for a few years because her tias lived in Chicago. So I have like tias and cousins that live there. So 10 years ago, my mom wanted to go to Chicago to visit her family that was over there. This is family that I've never met. So I was also really excited. Plus, like, I get to travel to Chicago, so that was pretty cool. So I believe it was like mid-July, I want to say, because that summer not only did I go to Chicago in July, I also spent all of June in California. So my dad's family lives in Santa Barbara, California, and then my mom's family, the majority, lives in Mexico, and then the other half lives in Chicago and in the Bay Area. So me and my mom flew to Chicago, and I think we were gonna stay there for 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really remember. Pretty sure we were staying there for 2 weeks. So I had cousins my age. I was meeting tias for the first time. I was meeting new family. So it was really cool. Like, I was meeting family. My family they still do. They live in the suburbs of Chicago in a little town called Joliet. It literally looked like it was a tiny, tiny town. Like, it was tiny, like it was farmland. Literally in like their housing community, they had like crops in the front. They had corn in the front fields, like, like a cornfield. And it was like a little cookie cutter housing community. In the front was a corn farm, and it was like a big like housing community. So I had a tia and her husband and her 4 kids that lived in one house, and that's where we were staying with my mom. And then I have another tia who had 3 kids at the time, and then my tia's mom was living with her. And like, my family literally lived in the same housing community. Like, the tia I was staying with, and then the other tia lived like a street away. So back and forth, like, me and my cousins would always like hop between houses, because we'd ride our bikes between houses, hang out at one house, and then later on hang out at the other house, because it was just that close. There's this one particular day we were having a barbecue that day, and so my mom, like my whole family, my tias, the younger kids, they were in the backyard. They were getting ready for the barbecue. And then me and my cousin Brianna and my cousin Victoria, we were riding our bikes. So I was staying with my cousin Victoria and her family, and my cousin Brianna, her mom is the one that lived like down the street. So we decided to ride our bikes to Brianna's house. And it was like in the afternoon. It was a really nice day. Like, it was summer in Chicago. Like, it was like 70s. Like, that's unheard of in Arizona in the summer. So we like rode the bikes to Brianna's house, and we were hanging at Brianna's house for, I don't remember how long. and then we decided it was time to ride our bikes back to Victoria's house because it was dinner time. Like they're having a barbecue that day. And I was the first one to ride up to Victoria's house. And my cousin Brianna and Victoria were like feet behind me. So as I'm like riding my bike up the porch, I literally see a woman, because they had like curtains. The curtains were closed, and I literally see a woman, like she had dark hair, like a white dress type, like she had black hair. It was kind of wavy like mine. And I see her like, you know when you like open the curtains and you peek? That's what I saw. I saw her like open the curtains, peek out, and then the curtains go back. And we had like a bunch of family in the house, so I was like, oh, it's my mom, it's my Thea, something like that. So I was like kind of brushing it off, like it wasn't that big of a deal. And then Victoria and Brianna finally caught up to me in the bikes, and I was like, oh, like so and so is looking out the window, like the food must be ready, like they're waiting for us. And as soon as we get in the house, I turn around and like no one's in the house. Everyone is in the backyard. So then that's when I'm like, that's when I start like kind of freaking out, because Victoria's house, they have told me that like stuff happens to them at the house, but like not to be scared. And I'm like, bitch, what do you mean not to be scared? Like I'm staying in a haunted house. Like I was like, what do you mean I shouldn't be scared? That's when I went to the backyard and I asked my mom and my tias and everyone that was in the backyard, I asked them, did you guys just look out of the front window? Like were you guys watching me, Victoria, and Brianna like roll up in our bikes? And everyone like looked at me like shook. They were like, no. And I'm like, what do you mean no? Like who did I see in the window? And Thea's kind of just disregarded it as like, oh, it was probably your grandma that was looking out of the window, because my great grandma was in Chicago that summer. That was a whole reason why we went, because my great grandma from Michoacan went to Chicago to visit my family, and that is the closest we are to her, because since we live in Arizona, that was the closest we have been to each other when we're not in Mexico. Like she's in the United States, so it's important. So that's why me and my mom flew to Chicago to go see my great grandma, and I hadn't seen her in like 3 years. And everyone just like brushed it off as it was my great grandma that was looking out of the window. So I was like, okay, whatever. Like I didn't make that big of a deal of it after that. And then later on that night, so right in front of that window where I saw like whoever it was looking out, they had like a long table in front of the window where it had like family photos. Like it had photos in a frame, and they were all just like on that little table. I don't know how to explain the table. It was like a tiny table where they just had photos, like the entryway table. And I was like looking at those photos, and I see a woman in one of the photos, and I'm like, holy shit, like this is the woman I saw at the window. And like I grabbed the photo, and at this point it was like past dinner, and everyone's sitting in the kitchen, and this is like in the entryway where the photos are. So I grab the photo and I go to like my tias and my mom, and I was like, who is this woman? Like this is who I saw in the window. And everyone's face like went blank. Like they were like, what do you mean this is who you saw in the window? And I'm like, this is exactly who I saw in the window, like the face, like this is her. And and my mom like looked at me and was like, that is my tia that died 25 years ago in a car accident. 25 years ago. She died here in Chicago. I think it was Chicago. Actually, I'm not really sure. It was either Chicago or Mexico where she died. But she died 25 years ago or 30 years ago. And actually, I think it was a car accident. Because when I saw the woman from here up, like her head was like missing. Like it was just like clear. Like, does that make sense? It was like, just imagine this just being black. And I saw from like her eyebrows down. And I saw her hair. She was wearing like a white lace gown. Like it was just like a gown, like white, and it had lace on it. And it was because I saw her in such detail. Like she was wearing eyeliner, she had long eyelashes, she had black wavy hair, white shirt, white dress. So I started like, so my mom was like, she actually got run over, and in the funeral, in her casket, they covered from here up because that's where she had the most damage. She died from blunt trauma to the head. So they're like in her funeral, like we couldn't see from here up because that's where she got hit. Like she was damaged from there. And then my mom was like, not only that, but in her casket, she got buried in a white lace gown. And when I tell you she told me that, I literally wanted to cry. Like I was like, and I mean, everyone believed me except my great grandma, because my great grandma, that was her daughter. That was my mom's Thea, that was my great grandma's daughter. So that would have been my grandma's sister. And she died in a really traumatic way. So like a lot of people in my family didn't like talking about her. She died really young. I think she wasn't even 30 when she died. She was like 27, 28. And so when I mentioned that that's who I thought I saw, my great grandma got like really upset. She got really hostile, immediately shut me down, said it wasn't her, to stop talking about it, that let her rest in peace. And I understand, like that was her daughter, she died in a really tragic way. Like who am I to speak about that? I never met her. But my tia, Victoria's mom, the one whose house I was staying at, they brushed it off like, oh yeah, like we see stuff here all the time. Like we've never seen her, but we've seen things happen at our house. So pretty much like everyone that lived there was like, oh whatever, like this is normal. And yeah, and that was my very, very first paranormal experience when I was 12 years old. My mom wasn't really upset about it, but she was calm knowing that it was her Thea, it was a family member of hers. I didn't know who this woman was at all, so can you imagine? Like I was freaked the fuck out. I was terrified. I was like, who did I just see? But thinking about it now, the detail of this woman, like everything I saw, her face, her hair, her makeup, it was very detailed. And I mean, it was scary for me at the time because I was 12 years old, but now I'm like, that was actually pretty cool. Later on, I think it gave my family like reassurance that my Thea's okay, even though I never met her. She died 30 years before I was even born. Me and my great grandma never talked about it after that, just because she was very hurt. Everyone else thought it was really cool that I was the one to see her because they had never seen her at all. No one had ever seen her in the house. Stuff did happen in that house, but never like one of our family members showing up. So I kind of felt like it was like really nice. Like I had the privilege of seeing someone, and it wasn't like an evil spirit, it wasn't a demon, it was my family member. And maybe that was her way of saying, hey, like nice to meet you. Like that was her presenting herself to me so that she could meet me. And her and my mom were really close when she was alive. My mom said that like her and her Thea were really, really close, so maybe she just wanted to say hi to her niece's daughter. And yeah, and that is it for this story time. This is my first paranormal story time. If you like this video and you like more videos like this, please subscribe to my channel. I'm starting to do beauty videos. I'm gonna start doing more Storytime's about when I was in high school, paranormal storytime, stuff like that. So if you want to keep on watching, please subscribe. Bye.